Today we're going to be talking about an installation method of laminate flooring called drop and lock. Now, as you probably know, there are different ways to install laminate flooring. Every manufacturer has their own license for a lock system or a click system, so always be sure to read the insert that comes in the box with the flooring you purchase before attempting to install any flooring. But the one that we're going to talk about today is drop and lock. The two most popular install methods or click methods are drop and lock and angle. We've already done a video on angle installation. Today we're going to be demonstrating the drop and lock installation. So let's get started with one of our drop and lock products. And the first thing you want to do is put your spacers all along the wall, every 18 inches to 2 feet or so, and down your side walls as well. On a drop and lock flooring installation, just as with an angle, you have two sides to your boards. You have a groove side, which is kind of a lower lip, and then you have a tongue side. You install this flooring with the tongue side against your wall and your groove side out into your field, out into your install area. You're going to be up against your spacers on the side wall and your spacers on your back wall. There are two common mistakes people often make when installing drop and lock flooring, but they're easy to correct, and then the rest of your floor, your install job should be a breeze. Let's look at the two common mistakes real quickly. The first, this is your starting wall. This is the groove side of the board. This needs to be out into your field, out into your room, and the tongue side needs to be up against your starting wall. Often people reverse that. They put the groove against the wall and the tongue into the field. Makes everything backwards, very difficult to install, but very common mistake and very easy to fix because all you do is you turn it around. But make sure that lower lip, that groove side that's out, is facing into your field, and then this tongue side is facing towards the wall. That's the first common mistake people make. Okay, so we have our first board installed, laying up against or sitting up against the spacers on both sides. To continue out and finish our first row, all we do is we line up the end joints and simply place the second board over top of the first, line up the end joints, make sure everything is tight against the spacers, and continue all the way to the end of the first row. Now these pieces are not completely locked together. That's one of the tricks that most people don't know about the drop and lock system. When you put the when you put the end joints together, this seam is not fully installed until you do your next row and this joint is covered. So it takes the next row to fully engage and fully lock in the row behind it. So we have our first row done all the way to the end of our wall. And always remember that with drop and lock flooring, just like with angle, whatever cuts off over here usually is a good sized piece, and you need to measure it. It needs to be at least 8 inches long, but it's usually a good sized piece to come over and start your second row with. Because with drop and lock, just like with angle, you will want your end joints or your end seams to be a minimum of 8 inches apart. So you need to make sure that the first piece in the second row has a board length that will give you at least an 8-inch stagger between rows. So to start the second row, the first piece of the second row goes in at a slight angle. You can see it'll slide very easily, and slide it all the way down to the end, up against the spacer, and then rock it into place. If necessary, you can tap the face with the palm of your hand. Now the second piece in the second row, you start with the side seam, the long seam. It too will slide at a slight angle. You do need to be careful to hold this seam, this joint together, because it's not engaged yet. you slide this in all the way over to the first piece to where it's basically laying right on top of the end joints, and then you push that down into place. If necessary, palm of your hand across the board. Now this is what locks in, like we said before, the seam in the first row. So just as this wasn't locked into the second row came in, this joint is not fully locked together until the third row comes in. So you continue that all the way down. The second common mistake people make when trying to install drop and lock flooring is that you install the long side seam first. You angle it in, you slide it, you get it over top of the other end seam, and then you push it down. The common mistake here is that people try to put in this end joint first, and they try to angle this in, slide it back, and then somehow rock the piece on the long side. Can't be done, causes problems, causes boards to break, causes locking mechanisms to break, makes people want to use a tapping block or a rubber mallet on the side seams, causes this row to come apart, all kinds of problems when you try to do the end joint first. And the reason people do that is because that's the common method on angle installation. On drop and lock installation, you must know and must remember you must install the long side seam first. Bring it over and drop it on top for the end seam. Two common mistakes, very easy to fix. On your third row, just as we've said, your next row has to come in to lock down your side seams. So when you angle in the long side seam all the way down to the spacer, pull back a little with your fingertips, rock it down, it will fold, palm of your hand if necessary, and you have a lock. As you go into your field and as you go into your install job, the more rows you add, the more weight the floor will have. And so if there is a slight bow, you can see how this piece is slightly, maybe 1/8 of an inch off of the surface. As you add weight, that will come down. That is perfectly natural. There is no defect in the board or anything like that. The weight of the flooring will hold the flooring down. Now on your last row, because as I've said, the side seams don't lock together until you get the next row in. On the last row, what will lock in those side seams, there's two things to consider. Number one is the weight of the entire floor. It's one moving, floating floor, so the weight will keep it down. And then of course your trim pieces. Whatever trim piece, if you've ended the last row at the end of the room and there's a wall and you put a quarter round down, or there's a transition piece you're going to carpet or tile, that transition piece will provide the locking for the the end seams in your last row. So that is how we install drop and lock flooring.